Hi, my name is Drew Scranton. I'm a manager of technical solutions on the water side in the Midwest region. This is my counterpart, David Overfield. He's a senior manager of technical solutions in the Midwest region. So is everybody in here currently a user? I see a lot of distributor badges, but I see some customers too. So you're already users of AutoRead for the most part? No, I gotta know, okay. Here's the agenda: AutoRead, route configuration, route processing, and then going through the reports. And we'll do a little live demo of actually going through AutoRead and kind of showing you how to create a route. We're not actually going to create it, but we'll walk you through it. What is AutoRead? So AutoRead is really a middleware between AutoView or a handheld and your customer information system. So here's just a little diagram of how AutoRead works. It's about as antiquated as a person as I could find here, but you've got your computer and your billing system. So we pull that file from your billing system on an ongoing basis. So that depends if you're doing just regular route reading on a daily schedule or if you're doing a drive-by system on a monthly schedule. It's important to always pull the latest file from your billing software. And why is it important? Because throughout the month, most utilities are out there doing meter changes, radio changes, customers move in, move out. And so pulling this file fresh on an ongoing basis gives you the most latest information and avoids some of the things that we will go through later in the reports. So from there, we pull the information into AutoRead, we process it, we send it out to either a handheld reader or, in most cases, a flash drive to be used on the AutoView system with a VGB or VXU. We use a lot of acronyms at Census. If you don't know what I'm talking about at some point, just please raise your hand and we will explain what we're talking about. VXU is the old radio read system. VGB is the new SmartPoint system that most people have been on for the last decade. Notice this guy right here, he's using a handheld reader. I want to point out one thing as we dive further into AutoRead. You will see my version in a minute is going to be a different version than what most of you customers or distributors have. That is because it is a beta version and it does include the functionality for the Android platform. One thing I want to point out is Tom Galuska is doing a presentation after this at 11 o'clock that will dive into handhelds and Windows Mobile versus Android. If most of you have been here paying attention for the last few days, we are developing on the Android platform, so you will no longer need to buy expensive handhelds to do your field processing with. Okay, so this is the basic functionality of how we move through the process on AutoRead. We start with no meters in the route. We talk to your billing system, we pull that in, so we call that the import functionality. You'll get a status of ready to load. You go to load and hit execute. You're going to get a device loaded, and that's when you're ready to go out and do your reading in the field. And then you perform the read functionality in the field. We bring it back in, we back it up, and we complete the process. Just so you guys know, there's no way I'm going to take 45 minutes on this presentation, so we'll give you back some of your time. Does anybody have any questions at this point? I see a lot of distributors, and I know we've got some new distributors. It's okay to speak up. Anybody have anything? Okay. Here we're going to jump over to the live presentation.
All right, here we'll go through the live demonstration portion of the presentation. One of the things we get a lot of times when people call into Census support is people don't know what version they're actually on. So up here on the top of the screen, you can see it's version 8.21, version 12. This was an internal version, I believe, that was for beta only, so you customers probably won't see version 12 here, but 8.21 was a very common version. So as we move down, we have the side view here where we have our different devices that are set up. In this case, we have handheld number 1, number 2, number 3. On the drop down for the vehicle system, we have VXU or VGB number 1. As we look at the route processing, which you can see handheld is highlighted here, over on the side we have some different routes that have been built within my AutoRead system. So this is just a generic handheld 001. Some utilities will see this because they only ever have one route. It's not named many different configurations. Here you can see one that was named Mackinac with Android and then Tremont. And these are all field type, field logic. So here it's telling us that we have no meters loaded. We can expand this. We can control each one of these individually, or we can come back to the master and control these this way. So from here, this is where we walk through our clear, execute, are you sure you want to execute, import. You can see here it's actually saying the route is not found. However, if it did pull in those meters, we would load the data and execute and work on down the list here. Once our meter reader has read this and comes back in, we're going to hit read data, execute, backup, execute, and then most importantly, export, which takes those reads in that file and puts it up back on the hard drive of the computer so that our billing software can go out and grab it. The vehicle system works basically the same way. We're going to work down this. You can see all the functions here are exactly the same. Difference being is typically you're going to have a flash drive to transfer from the VGB or VXU computer back into the computer that's used to do the billing and the processing with AutoRead. So within these, you can click on any one of these, right click, select maintenance, and this takes you into kind of the route creation. So for a lot of our distributors, these are the different functions that you're going to set up for our customers. So export control is very important. So in most cases, we're going to use the overwrite function because down here, the path at which you're going to do things from the import and export screen, you're going to want to use you're going to use the same path over and over again. And this is going to overwrite last month's file. So instead of having bad information from last month, you're going to overwrite with new information from this month and put it in the same location. So the confirm or automatic is just going to ask you if you're sure you want to execute the action that you've told AutoRead to move forward with. Route backup, it's going to give you the path. You can select where you would like to drop that file. So here it's just going to a general AutoRead folder. Down here, we're telling it what device we want to use. In this case, I have 3 different handhelds set up with my system. So we can select device 1, 2, or 3. We're also going to tell it what kind of route this is. And in this case, and in most cases today, we're using the field logic. A lot of these are legacy routes. The RT reader is very seldom used anymore. FlexRead is pretty much done away with about 5 years ago. And then MXU Programmer is one of the functions for our MXUs versus our smart points. So the reading display, we don't typically use multipliers anymore on AMR reads. This goes back many, many years where billing softwares may not have had the capability to add zeros to the reads. The import tab, in this case, we're telling it that it is a fixed width format. We can also do these different options. We do see variable quite often in the form of a CSV file coming from the billing software company. Here is the file path. You can hit this as a location to transfer your files in and out. I have different ones selected within this. Down here is where you go to format that file. And so in this case, we have the account ID set up as the first, and we have the starting position of 1 with a field length of 10. And then you can see we just work down the list, and we can add pretty much anything the billing company wants to send over to us. Some of the requirements are account ID, service type, meter ID, and then if you are a radio read customer or a customer using smart points, you would have the MXU ID as well, and the MXU type. So here you can see name is in all caps. That is actually a custom field where we just created an extra field and typed in name. So it was not one of the standard fields in the drop-down menu. So we created that versus using several of these others that are already in the file. You can take these and you can move these up or down depending on where you want them in the sequence. I find it easiest to use my starting position and have it go in order, but sometimes you will see where these are out of order. The starting position and the length is what's dictating where it's at in the file coming from billing. So over here, we have the display order. You can choose to display up to 5 of these on your handheld. Service address, I believe, will always be #1, and then you can decide what you want from there. So display order 2 for account ID, display order 3 for name, meter ID, MXU ID. I personally don't like to put previous reading in. That actually gives the meter reader the opportunity to cheat. So if they see the previous read, they may be inclined to add 3,000 to it or 4,000 or 5,000 and not actually get a read, especially in a direct read or touch read application. So the record length is very important. That dictates how long the file is and where we return back to the next line and start to see that data as a second, third, and fourth line. The export field, we're doing the same thing here. We're just taking this information and sending it back to billing in the format that they've given us. So this billing software company has said we want to see meter ID in starting position 1, and it can be up to 40 positions long. The meter type will be in position 41 for one position, so on and so forth. Carriage return line feed terminated is often used. So sometimes it's important to make sure you have that checked when you're setting up these customers. The reports field is where you can go and add any reports that can print automatically upon downloading the reads from, in this case, the handheld or the VXU or VGB. We have multiple reports listed here. You know, in this case, we have selected the master route, the statistical summary, register malfunction, and smart point status. Smart point status is going to give you the alarms that are available from a smart point in walk-by or drive-by mode. The statistical summary is an interesting one. We don't see it used a lot anymore. This will actually tell you the time in between reads, and it will also tell you if the meter reader has stopped reading, when the last reading came in, and then when the reading starts again. So it is a watchdog that you can use on your meter readers if you choose. The master route we find is very informational, and a lot of utilities like to keep this on hand because it is an electronic verification for auditors. They can see that reads were entered manually or electronically, and if they were manual, it's a good way to make sure that someone's not helping their buddy out. So the vehicle system is very similar. If we come down here and we select Mackinac, we can go in and look at all of the information. Looks very similar. But importantly, on the import tab, if you're using the mapping feature, then the GIS latitude and GIS longitude would need to be added, and the decimal formatted GPS coordinates would be in the billing file coming over to AutoRead so that we can export those out to AutoView and give you the maps that you like to see and helps your meter reading. Again, the reports, everything can just be added as we will bounce through here. High-low exception if you're still using that report. Again, the master route, MXU status, MXU worksheet. Zero consumption, you know, this report, your billing software typically will do the same thing, is it will give you any meter that didn't list consumption in since the last read. One thing I forgot to mention on the import tab is the service type is very important, and this is either going to be a water, gas, or electric. In this case, we have done what's called make it a constant. Some people refer to this as hard coding. So this water customer did not have the service type field in their file coming from their billing software. So we have added that, and we just give it a capital W, and it is important that is capitalized, either the water, gas, or electric. Now, one thing I would add is that if it's a combo account, we do have to have those individually listed in the file, or we can't tell AutoRead or AutoView if it's looking for a gas meter, electric meter, or water meter. So as long as you're a single type utility, we can look at that and use water, gas, or electric individually. Again, the reports, they're all available over here. It looks like duplication. It is. You can select any of these. You can also come to any of these in mid-month, depending on the route that you've selected, and rerun these alarms or these reports. You can see in this case, I don't have any high-low exceptions, but you can click on this and re-execute it if you would like to. So you can manipulate some of the views and the names. You can see here, it says your company name here. I'm an internal census employee, so I don't have to have the village of or the city of or public water district number 1 up there. But if you wanted it, you can go in and edit these reports and add those fields in. I think that about wraps up the live demo portion of the presentation. I will add that this Ethernet Wi-Fi field logic option was new in the last year or so. And this works really well if you're on a Wi-Fi network and it's a constant network. You can load your handheld right through this Wi-Fi connection without having to plug it in and use the mobile device center or a docking station anymore. Otherwise, I will wrap that up and we'll move back over to the PowerPoint.
So the high-low exception report, I don't have a lot of customers use this these days. This would flag the meter reader to investigate on the spot when he gets the read. If you're sending us high and low, and those do come from the CIS system, those are a calculation. A lot of times it'll be 50% less than the average for the low and 150% above the average for the high. If you flag outside of those, the handheld reader is going to give you a funny tone, and then that's an indication to stop and look at it. It also gives you an asterisk next to the address so that you know to do that. We talked about zero consumption. We will jump over to the MXU worksheet. Oh, that's touchy. The MXU, sorry, somebody have something? The MXU worksheet. This gives you a lot of information about that. Is bad read, you can see that up here. So a bad read would be the MXU or the smart point is trying to interrogate the register and can't get a good read. A lot of times that'll be due to that question mark that I talked about earlier being in the reading string. I'm going to kind of bounce through that. Actually running longer than I expected. Just more about the MXU worksheet. These are your codes out to the side. These actually are at the bottom of the report. Didn't have a way to put that up here. You can see needs investigated, bad read, no register data received, register malfunction, question marks in the reading string. It's very common on registers approaching 15 to 20 years old on a mechanical register. And that will come from Badger and Neptune as well, if you guys weren't aware of that. So if you have on the water side Badger and Neptune meters, mechanical registers, they will send an error flag. Electronic registers don't send a question mark anymore, but they do have an error string in them, so that will transmit through as a bad read. Just more about the MXU worksheet. There's a code for non-route meters. No register data received. Wiring to the register is bad. Register itself is bad. Port on the MXU programmed incorrectly. We don't typically see that on smart points anymore. That was more of a MXU feature, the old radio read system. And one thing to note about that is if you still have MXUs and you're migrating to smart points, one of these error codes will actually say port. Some of that was due to the multi-port expander that we used to produce for the MXU system. We do not make that anymore. It's not compatible with the smart points. So if you had 8 radios or 8 meters tied to a single radio on the MXU system, it would define which port actually had the error for you. So on a smart point, you can only have 2 ports. Here you can see the bad read, asterisk, asterisk, plus sign, question mark. There's port 2's data. You can see right there, port 2. So that kind of jumps into what I was talking about a minute ago. Port 1's programmed not to respond. We typically wouldn't see that in a smart point. You're pretty much always going to default to port 1 on a dual port. Port 2 may not be active. In fact, a lot of talk about Ally this week. Port 2 will never be active when connected to an Ally meter. The firmware has the intelligence to know it's an Ally meter and will kill port 2 so that you can't connect to it. That's to preserve battery life. Well, that's what we've got.
Appreciate it.